Hello, friends. I am Chevy. Welcome to my shed. How are you today? How's life in your world? How's things where you are? I hope it's fantastic. Everything here is great. And today we're going to talk about a book called My Best Friend's Exorcism by. Don't know. Doesn't say on the cover. Grady Hendrix. I, I kind of ragged on this book last week in a video about 80s nostalgia because this book was released during a time when releasing things about 80s nostalgia was hot. I guess they kind of still are, but this was like the post um, Ready Player One phase when things like Stranger Things came out. This came out the same year as Stranger Things. So there was like this, let's dig up a bunch of 80s nostalgia and put it out there. And so I kind of ragged on it for that because it does that. There's a lot of pandering in here. And I still believe that. I still think that there's some stuff in here that's just kind of like, oh, come on. Like, you didn't need to put like buzzwords and stuff in just because. Uh, However, I said in that video I probably wasn't going to finish the book. I did finish the book. I did end up enjoying the book. I'm glad I read it. My Best Friend's Exorcism is about an exorcism and about the events that lead up to that. But more importantly, it's about a group of female friends in the late 80s who go through a bunch of trying times together and a little bit about, those relationships. And as a male who grew up in the 80s and 90s, this all was believable to me. Like the characters, the internal thoughts, the way that they approached relationships in the world felt very real to me. And I went looking specifically for voices of female critics or reviewers, and they all agreed, like, wow, he did a really good job of capturing the female identity during, especially during high school times, as a male. Like, he did a great job with that. So apparently it's a pretty good characterization of females growing up during that time, of girls, like of their cattiness and their backhandedness and all of that crazy stuff that you hear about. Yeah, it happens. I have daughters. Like, I have an older sister, right? Like, I've seen it 1,000 times. And that's captured here. So it's a story about some kids going through a tough time, as well as going through puberty, as well as being in a private school and all that entails with, pressure on their social lives as well as their parents' social lives. The main character, I don't remember her name, very forgettable name, whatever it is. She is let me see if I can figure out her name. I don't know. Abby. That's right. Abby is the main character. She is a scholarship student at this private school. So all the other kids are rich. She is not. She is very not rich, but she's a very strong academic candidate. So she gets in, and her friends are all very wealthy friends. And they have a summer where some bad stuff happens, and ultimately, I don't think this is a spoiler by saying that one of the friends has to have an exorcism. And so, the book is, I think, it's put into the horror genre, and I think that fits. There are definitely some horrific things in here, but it's not a slasher book. It's not a running scared book. It's not the kind of book that's going to give you bad dreams. There's just some, like, mentions of horrific things that are outside. Think of the movie The Exorcism. Think of spinning heads and vomiting and that sort of stuff. Nothing crazy like, constantly sneaking up behind you, whatever. There's no scary monsters other than the characters. They're scary monsters to each other. They treat each other like monsters. To give you some more general criticisms or reviews, I think the characters are all pretty just okay. Like, they're good characters, but there's no arcs in here. The main character Abby doesn't go through anything. Like, she goes through a lot of things, but it doesn't inspire growth. Like, a typical character arc would mean that she would have to overcome something. That doesn't really happen. She overcomes a lot of little things, but it's nothing really that I would say is a big arc. When I say overcome, I mean internally. Like, there's lots of external conflict in this book. There's a whole lot of she's up against things. she's supremely stupid, just the dumbest person you've ever met in your life. She does a really lot of dumb things and says a lot of dumb things and takes very hard stances on things she probably shouldn't take hard stances on. But I think that was, necessary for the story, and it works. In the end, it works. I will say that the exorcism in the title is probably my least favorite part of the book. It's just not great, and I'll talk about that when I talk about spoilers. But overall, I feel like it was a good read. It was fun. It was engaging. I felt for the characters in some way. I didn't have that big, like, oh, she did it moment. There was none of that, which I really enjoy from character pieces. But overall, I think it was a well-crafted story. So from this point forward, spoilers. If you don't like spoilers, go away. The Exorcism just sucked. It was really dumb. It was kind of like, I felt like when we got to the point of the Exorcism, it could have been entirely off screen. It could have just been like, and then she went and saw an exorcist and everything was fine. Because that's really all we needed from that scene at that point. Like, everything had built up to that. There was no, like, there was no precursor to, I think she's possessed by a demon, will you help me? Like, when she figures out she's possessed by a demon, she goes straight to the exorcist, and they go straight to just ruining everything. There's no, like, she doesn't try to convince people at school, whatever. There's none of that. And so the exorcism is just kind of like an abuse scene. Like, we get to see this man abuse this girl who's possessed by a demon. And then when he fails at whatever it is he's doing, beating the crap out of her, her friend comes in and successfully performs the exorcism by, like, evoking Paul Simon or something. Like, it's a very weird scene that's just like, what? This is dumb. This is like just the worst part of the book in my experience. Other than, I did mention last week when I talked about the triteness of it, there was one chapter in particular, and that's what triggered me last week, where it felt like it was the four girls in one of the girls' bedrooms talking teen stuff, and it was a completely superfluous chapter. I went back and reread it, and I think maybe there was a couple of, like, little tiny character insights, but the rest of it was just exposition to insert as much 80s nostalgia as possible. It was like, let me shove this in your face. Let me shove this in your face. And the rest of the scene was completely useless. It didn't forward any of the stories. It just maybe gave you a little bit of appreciation for these four characters' kind of friendships, but the rest of it was meh. I mentioned before the main character is dumb. She's supremely stupid. Just the absolute stupidest main character. Every time she does something, you're just like, what the hell are you doing? You're an idiot. The villain, I guess, Gretchen, she's not the villain, but she ends up being, because she's possessed, was a very compelling, I very much liked the transformation from going from herself to this demon, then to this super, like, nice, but I'm also manipulating everybody character that was the demon. That was fun, and the author kind of spoon-fed that a little bit, kind of gave us a, well, here's what's going on. Did she start, not being herself, and then suddenly she's now the nicest person in the world, doing everything for everybody, and you're like, yeah, well, that's how demon possession works, and you're like, okay, I didn't need that. That's cool. I will say, one of my criticisms of myself, I guess, is I read this on a Kindle. This is a Kindle Scribe. This is really intended to be like a multimedia. You really need... The print edition is laid out like a yearbook. There's a bunch of nostalgia in there. There's a bunch of, like, flyers for Satanic Panic stuff and for the powerlifting, weightlifting Christ brothers who The Exorcist is and all that sort of stuff. You kind of miss out. They put some of it in here, but it's just... I don't think it goes right. I think that would be much better presented in a physical form. So I don't think reading it on this Kindle is the correct way to do it. There's also music that goes along with it. Like, it's a whole experience. This isn't just a book. It's an experience, and I only got to experience the novelization of it. But overall, I think I gave it a 3 out of 5, which I think is a fair. Like, it's just it's a book. It's an average, slightly above average, just a decent book. It was a good read. It left me with some interesting thoughts about The 80s, it didn't necessarily leave me with a whole lot about the characters. Like I just kind of felt okay, you know. And there is a little like wrap up, like here's what these characters did over the next phases of their lives, and now they're dead or whatever. I don't know. That felt fine. Like that was okay. Like it could have just not and just been like, and they went on to live their lives and been like, all right. But there is a nice little wrap up if you're into that sort of thing. So overall, I think it was a fun ride. I think the premise was good. I think there was a lot of missed opportunities along the way to make the exorcism a bigger part of the book and not just this weird scene at the end. Make it more obvious as time goes on that this is what's happening. Other characters becoming aware of it. Make it, oh my God, or whatever. But then I guess at that point you're leaning a little too far in the direction of something like The Exorcist, where we've tried, and now we have this final thing. We don't, as outside observers, we don't get to see what the parents tried with Gretchen because she's basically cut off from Abby. So we have no idea if she's been to therapy or whatever. We don't know what avenues they've explored other than just letting her ruin her life. Which maybe is a commentary on rich parents. I don't know. Anyway, my best friend's exorcism. I'd say if you are into the theme or you want a splash of 80s nostalgia, it's a good book. Check it out. Thank you for being here as always. Thank you for liking, commenting, subscribing, being amazing friends, wonderful people. I really appreciate you. And I'll see you again tomorrow. Today's word you should know sounds smart is torrid, as an adjective meaning ardent and passionate. The torrid romance between Allison and her family's stable boy lasted only a short time before the family discovered the tryst and fired the young man. Torrid, Torrid. What does ardent mean? Because I thought torrid was like whirlwind, like in and out quickly, just rapid. Is that maybe I definitely thought it was passion, but more like a sudden burst and then it's gone kind of thing.